My name is Eliza Quinn, and I am 28 years old. 6 months ago, my life felt like a poorly constructed building, threatening to collapse at any moment. Freshly divorced, with my 2-year-old son Leo clinging to my leg and less than $200 to my name, I packed my beat-up sedan and drove west, leaving the wreckage of my marriage in Ohio behind. We landed in Portland, Oregon, a city chosen mostly for its distance and vague promises of a fresh start. It delivered on the distance, but the fresh start felt more like trading one struggle for another. Life in Portland became a relentless grind. By day, I navigated the chaotic world of a downtown diner waitress, balancing trays of steaming coffee and lukewarm sympathy, my tips barely covering Leo's daycare fees. By night, after tucking Leo into his second-hand crib in our cramped, drafty rental bungalow, I became a ghost, scrubbing toilets and vacuuming deserted office buildings until the early hours. Sleep was a luxury I snatched in 2-hour increments, often slumped over the kitchen table or during my bus commute between jobs. Our apartment was, well, it had character. Peeling paint revealed layers of questionable color choices from previous tenants. The floors creaked with every step, the windows rattled in the Portland drizzle, and a persistent dampness clung to the air, especially in the small back bedroom where Leo and I slept. But it was ours, a tiny, flawed sanctuary in a life that felt constantly under siege. The rent was cheap, barely manageable, but cheaper than anything else I could find that wasn't actively hazardous. The divorce had been brutal. Mark, my ex-husband, hadn't just broken my heart. He'd emptied our joint savings account before disappearing, leaving me with the debts and the debris of our shared life. He'd called me naive, impractical, blamed my lack of ambition for his own failures. Maybe he was right about the naive part. I had believed in him, in us. Now all I believed in was the ache in my back and the constant, gnawing anxiety about making rent. Every penny was accounted for. Meals were simple: pasta, rice and beans, oatmeal. Leo's clothes came from thrift stores. My own wardrobe consisted of my waitress uniform, my cleaning smock, and a rotation of worn-out jeans and t-shirts. Luxuries were things like buying Leo fresh fruit instead of canned, or affording a new box of crayons when his old ones wore down to nubs. Despite the hardship, Leo was my sunshine. His toddler giggles were the brightest sound in our small world. His chubby arms wrapped around my neck were the only anchor I needed. Watching him sleep, his small face peaceful under the dim nightlight, gave me the strength to face another pre-dawn alarm, another shift on my feet, another night breathing in the smell of industrial cleaner. But the exhaustion was taking its toll. My smiles felt thinner, my patience frayed. Some nights, after scrubbing floors until my hands were raw, I'd come home and just sit in the dark, too tired to even cry, wondering how long I could keep this up. It was a drizzly Tuesday evening in late spring when the wall decided to join the general state of collapse. I was putting Leo to bed, reading him his favorite battered copy of Goodnight Moon. He pointed a chubby finger at a persistent water stain on the ceiling that seemed to be spreading. Oh, Mommy," he murmured sleepily. Later, after he was asleep, I investigated. The stain originated from a crack in the plaster wall near the window in our bedroom. It wasn't just damp, the plaster felt soft, almost mushy, under my touch. Great, I thought, another repair I couldn't afford. Calling the landlord was useless. Mr. Henderson was notorious for his glacial response times to maintenance requests, especially in his cheaper properties like mine. If I wanted it fixed, I'd have to do it myself. Maybe patching the plaster would at least stop the draft and hide the ugly crack. It was a small thing, but the thought of making even one corner of our dreary apartment look a little better felt like a necessary act of defiance against the overwhelming shabbiness of our life. The next day, my only day off, I gathered my meager supplies, a small tub of spackle I found on clearance, a cheap putty knife, and some old newspaper to protect the floor. Leo was napping, granting me a rare window of quiet. I started chipping away at the damaged plaster around the crack, intending to create a clean edge for the patch. The old plaster crumbled easily, falling onto the newspaper in dusty chunks. Then my putty knife hit something solid behind the plaster, something that wasn't lath and plaster. Thud. Curious, I chipped away more carefully. Behind the crumbling surface was wood. Old, dark wood. Definitely not part of the original wall structure. It looked like the edge of a panel. Or maybe a hidden cabinet. My heart started to beat a little faster. Old houses sometimes had secrets, hidden compartments, forgotten spaces. Probably just an old blocked-up alcove, I told myself, trying to temper the sudden, irrational flicker of hope. But the wood looked deliberately placed, fitted neatly into the wall cavity. I pushed gently against it. It didn't budge. I ran my fingers along the edges, feeling for a latch or a seam. Near the bottom corner, my finger caught on a slight indentation. I pressed it. With a soft, scraping sound that sent dust motes dancing in the afternoon light, a section of the wooden panel, about 2 feet square, swung inward on hidden hinges, revealing a dark, musty-smelling cavity within the wall. I froze, staring into the darkness. My breath caught in my throat. This wasn't just an alcove. It was a deliberately concealed space. My mind raced. What could be hidden inside? Old letters? Forgotten heirlooms? Or just emptiness? Using my phone's flashlight, I peered inside. The space was small, maybe 3 feet deep, lined with rough sawn timber. It smelled of dust, old paper, and something else, the faint, metallic tang. And sitting squarely in the middle of the cavity were 2 canvas bags, the heavy-duty kind banks used for deposits, cinched tightly at the top with leather drawstrings. They were stained and faded, clearly old, but undeniably full. My hands were shaking as I reached in and pulled out the first bag. It was surprisingly heavy. The leather drawstring was stiff with age. With fumbling fingers, I managed to loosen it and peered inside. My breath hitched. Stacks of bills. Old bills, 50s and 100s, bound with brittle paper bands. It wasn't Monopoly money. It looked real. My mind struggled to comprehend what I was seeing. This couldn't be real. It had to be a prank, a forgotten movie prop, anything but actual money hidden in the wall of my rundown rental. I pulled out the second bag. It was just as heavy, just as full. I emptied both bags onto the newspaper-covered floor, the stacks of cash making a soft, papery thud. Hundreds. 50s. Even some older, rarer $1,000 bills I'd only seen in pictures. They were dusty, smelled faintly of mildew, but they were undeniably currency. I sank back on my heels, staring at the pile. How much was here? It looked like a lot. More money than I had ever seen in my life. My heart hammered against my ribs. Adrenaline surged through me, a dizzying mix of disbelief, excitement, and sheer terror. Whose money was this? Why was it hidden here? Was it stolen? Drug money? I quickly pushed the wooden panel shut. It clicked back into place, leaving no visible seam. I swept up the fallen plaster, stuffed the newspaper into a trash bag, and frantically tried to make the room look untouched. My hands were still shaking. I looked at the pile of money on the floor. I had to hide it, somewhere safe, somewhere no one would look. Under the loose floorboard beneath Leo's crib? Too obvious. In the back of the linen closet? Too accessible. My eyes fell on my largest suitcase, stored on the top shelf of my closet, the one I hadn't used since the move from Ohio. Perfect. I quickly began stuffing the stacks of bills inside, layering them between my old sweaters and folded jeans. The suitcase became heavy, dense with the impossible weight of found fortune. I zipped it shut, hoisted it back onto the shelf, and pushed it deep into the corner, behind a stack of spare blankets. Leo stirred in his crib, murmuring in his sleep. I rushed to his side, smoothing his hair, my heart still pounding. He settled back down, oblivious to the life-altering secret now hidden just feet away. I spent the rest of the day in a daze. I tried to act normal, playing with Leo, making dinner, but my mind kept returning to the money. $5 million. I had counted it, stack by painstaking stack, my hands trembling, my breath catching with each bundle of hundreds. It was an astronomical sum, enough to change everything. But the fear was just as potent as the excitement. Where did it come from? The house was old, built in the 1920s according to the landlord, who lived here before. Could someone come back looking for it? The thought sent a fresh wave of panic through me. I spent hours that night researching the house's history online, digging through dusty digital archives of property records and old city directories. The ownership trail was convoluted. A doctor in the 30s, a family during the war years, a mysterious period in the 60s where records were sparse, then a series of renters until Mr. Henderson bought it cheap in the 90s. There was no obvious clue, no notorious bank robber or gangster linked to the address. The money remained a terrifying, exhilarating mystery. The internal conflict raged. Should I turn it in? Call the police? The thought of handing over $5 million, of returning to my life of scraping by, felt physically painful. This money, it wasn't just cash. It was freedom. It was safety for Leo. It was an escape hatch from the crushing weight of poverty I had carried for so long. Dad always worked himself to the bone, I reasoned. He deserved an easier life in his retirement. Leo deserved a future with opportunities one never had, good schools, maybe even college without drowning in debt. This money could provide that. It felt like a gift, a dangerous, ethically gray, life-altering gift. I decided, sitting there in the dark with Leo sleeping peacefully nearby, that I would keep it. But I would be careful. No sudden splurges, no flashy changes. I would wait, let the money sit hidden away until I was sure it was safe, until I had a plan. I patched the hole in the wall the next day, smoothing the spackle carefully, painting over it with a matching shade I found in the shed. The repair was barely noticeable. My secret was safe, hidden behind a thin layer of plaster and paint, just like the money was hidden in my closet. Life continued, the relentless routine of work and childcare, but now everything felt different. The exhaustion was still there, but the gnawing anxiety about money began to recede, replaced by a quiet, secret hum of possibility. I started small. I bought Leo the new pair of shoes he needed, without agonizing over the price tag. I treated myself to a decent haircut. I started buying fresh vegetables instead of frozen. Tiny changes, invisible to the outside world, but monumental to me. One evening, my waitress manager, Brenda, pulled me aside. "Eliza, you seem lighter," she said, studying my face. "Something good happen?" I just smiled. "Maybe," I replied vaguely, just feeling a bit more hopeful. The first major change came 3 months later. I quit the nighttime cleaning job. Walking out of that office building for the last time, leaving behind the smell of bleach and the ache in my back, felt like shedding a heavy skin. Just having one job felt like an unimaginable luxury. I could finally sleep for more than 4 hours straight. I could spend evenings with Leo, really be with him, reading extra stories, building taller block towers, not just rushing through bedtime routines on autopilot. With a little more breathing room, I started looking for a new place to live. The drafty bungalow, once a necessary refuge, now felt like a cage holding my secret. I found a small, clean 2-bedroom apartment in a safer neighborhood with a small park nearby. The rent was higher, but now I could afford it without sacrificing groceries. Moving day felt like an emancipation. As Leo ran laughing through the empty, sunny rooms of our new apartment, I felt tears well up, tears of relief, of gratitude, of sheer, overwhelming possibility. I still drove my old sedan. I still shopped at thrift stores for Leo's clothes, though now I could buy him the cute dinosaur jacket he wanted, not just the plainest one. I kept my job at the diner, but the constant, suffocating fear was gone. I started putting money aside, a substantial amount, into a hidden savings account, then into low-risk investments, guided by frantic late-night research on financial planning for windfalls. I opened an education fund for Leo. I even anonymously sent a large check to my dad's diner, enough to cover repairs and maybe let him hire some extra help, routing it through a charity to ensure it couldn't be traced back to me. He called me, choked up, talking about the miracle donation that had appeared. I just listened, smiling, feeling a quiet joy in being able to ease his burden without revealing my secret. Life wasn't suddenly perfect. Being a single mom was still hard. Work was still demanding. But the crushing weight of poverty had lifted. I could breathe. I could plan. I could dream. I started taking online courses in bookkeeping and business management during Leo's naps, nurturing a long-dormant ambition of maybe, someday, opening my own small cafe, a place filled with warmth and good food, the kind of place my dad ran, but without the constant struggle. The money hadn't changed who I was. I was still Eliza, the hard worker, the careful saver, the devoted mom. But it had changed my circumstances in ways that felt profound. It gave me security. It gave me options. And most importantly, it gave me back a piece of myself I thought I had lost forever. Hope. The fear that someone might come looking for the money never completely vanished, But as months turned into a year, then two, it faded into a background hum. My secret remained safe, a silent foundation upon which I was carefully, cautiously, rebuilding my life, one small, hopeful brick at a time.